All right, here are 17 different side hustles you can do on your farm. Number one is to rent out a house or do Airbnb. Short and long-term rentals are probably the best way that you can make money on land. If you have enough of it, if you have the resources to get a house, to get a accessory dwelling unit, it's definitely going to depend on what county you're in, what jurisdiction you're in, what they allow you to build. Yeah, so you're gonna have to check with your county on that. Number two is parking spaces. At first it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but if you have a few different parking spaces that are covered, especially, and you're in an area that gets a good amount of traffic, some people go on vacation. Like my wife and I earlier this year, we did 5 months over volunteering in Europe and UK, and we needed to store our cars. And luckily we had someone, but a lot of people will pay to be able to store it someplace that they can trust. And if you have garages or if you just simply have covered spaces, that could be something that people would pay for. Number three is camping spots. So for these, you would just need some basic amenities like a toilet, a shower, some place to dispose of waste and recycling. But you could do a rainwater catchment system for the water that people use. You could do a gray water to mulch basin if you were going to go down the route of like having a shower or something like that. And I'll provide a link in the description to Andrew Milliston's video on how to do that. And he goes way more in depth than anyone I've ever seen on how to do gray water to waste systems. And you could also have a composting toilet. And these things are not crazy expensive to get up and going. And once they are up and running, you don't have to do a lot of management to them. As for the camping spots, you could obviously do a glamping spot if you want to charge a higher price per area. Let's say you're limited on space, or let's say you've got a lot of space, you could do tent sites or RV sites. And even with RVs, you don't necessarily need to have hookups. You could just label it as boondocking, and people would still pay for that as long as it's a beautiful area, easy access, that kind of thing. Number four is storage containers. So yeah, a lot of people need storage for things, and it's kind of expensive to store things in storage facilities. Like these tiny little boxes are actually pretty expensive per month. So if you can offer something, for a lot more of an affordable price to people, especially if you've built trust with people along the way by having an established business elsewhere with any of these other things that I'm listing here, or whatever your business is, that could build the trust that you need for people to feel like they could store things over at your property. But really good passive way, if you have, a shed or anything that could be stored in securely, could be a really good passive income. Number five is seasonal festivals. And with these, the ideas are pretty endless, but here's just a few, right? You can have a pumpkin patch, you could have a harvest fair, you could have a spring planting event, and you can even have it be like a seasonal planting event, right? Like this is what we do during each season, this is what we plant, this is how we plant them, and have it be kind of like an educational event as well. You could do a pagan holiday seasonal event, which is basically just like the seasonal cycles, right? So Samhain is October 31st to November 1st, and it celebrates the end of the harvest and the thinning of the veil between worlds, and the beginning of the Celtic New Year. And then you have Yule, which is the winter solstice, and that's around December 21st, and it celebrates the rebirth of the sun and the lengthening of the days, because that's the shortest day. You have Imbolc, which is February 1st to 2nd, celebrates the return of light and the promise of spring. You have Austera, which is the spring equinox, which is around March 21st, and it celebrates the return of spring and equal length of day and night. And you have Beltane, which is a fire festival. You can have an effigy that you burn. You have Litha, which is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. It celebrates the peak of the sun's power. You have Lunasa, August 1st, celebrates the first harvest and the bounty of the earth. And you have Mabon, which is the autumn equinox, which is like September 21st, and it celebrates the second harvest and the balance between light and darkness. You don't necessarily have to consider them pagan holidays because they're kind of just seasonal, cyclical times of the year, and you can celebrate them based on what you plant and have it kind of be this like, you can have it be this very on brand kind of festival that you run that is linked to the seasons. And on that note, you could have also intentional community events. And once again, there's pretty much a never-ending list that could be made for these things, but here's just a few. Kind of going off what we've already talked about, you could have controlled burns. You could do outdoor movie nights, get a large projector, do drive-ins, have seats or no seats, bring your own chair kind of thing. It's a good chance to build community. You don't even have to necessarily have people pay for it if you're trying to get people just to come to your land to be able to see kind of what your business is all about. You could have concert or poetry nights. You could have a free community compost. Once again, like they could manage it. You can have the community manage it as just a free resource that they come and manage. Or you can do it yourself and offer it to your community for free to give back. It's just another good way to build, community, build camaraderie, build trust, that kind of thing. You could also have a community garden, which they manage and they, harvest from. Number 7 is content creation. So exactly what I'm doing now. You'll see a lot of different farms on YouTube because it's an extremely good way to get your brand out there and to market your business. If you are getting a good amount of views, you can get some income from it, but I primarily see it as like a way of getting marketing out to people to potentially help your business. You could also have a farmer's market on site. Once again, pretty much unlimited amount of things that you could do with this, but I've got a rapid fire list here that I'm going to walk you through. So you could invite other vendors, that could just be people that you know, to appeal to a wider audience, right? You could have people selling all sorts of different things, or even just helping teach people how to do things, right? Arts and crafts, that kind of thing. And you could sell produce, anything that grows in your area, herbs and teas, herbal remedies, and you can teach people about herbal remedies as you're selling them. You could do homemade soaps, essential oils. You can sell seeds, and I'm a huge fan of seed saving, having a large seed bank, and offering locally grown, resilient varieties for people to grow strains that like their environment, because too often we, are buying seeds that are not best suited for our environment. They're grown a few states over or a totally different country, and they don't grow very well in our environment. So it's really nice to have a local place that offers seeds that grow really well in that specific environment. You could make tinctures, which they last a while. They're very easy to make. And this goes for mushrooms, this goes for medicinal plants, pretty much anything that you would eat as a medicinal source. You simply just need a food-grade alcohol or vinegar, your minced mushrooms or herbs. You put them in a mason jar. You shake it every few days for about 2 to 8 weeks. You strain all those solids out, and you just keep the liquid. And now you've got a shelf-stable product for at least 3 to 5 years, and potentially longer if you store it in a cooler place. And that contains all the beneficial compounds of whatever element you put in there, whether it's a medicinal mushroom or herb or whatever it is. And that's really nice to be able to offer to people, along with some form of education on, how to make it themselves and how to treat certain things with it. Not to say it should replace a doctor, but nature is a healer for sure. You could ferment foods and sell those. You can sell honey, dried goods, jams, preservatives, homemade baked goods, vermicompost, which is basically worm poop. And it's probably one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life, and I will forever be doing vermicomposting. It's super simple. You just get a tote or a bathtub, whatever type of container you can think of that has drainage. You put worms in there, you put bedding in there, which is basically a carbon source, and greens, and they turn that all into vermicompost, which is really, really bioactive compost, so your plants can absorb it really easily. And then while you're doing vermicompost, you could also sell worms, right? So if you have too many worms, you don't know what to do with them, you can sell them. You can sell compost. You can sell biochar. And I've got a link to how you can make biochar in the description. It's super simple, and once again, it kind of just adds a lot of life to the soil. You can sell wood ash. You can sell manure, books, arts and crafts. Yeah, this list kind of can go on and on because it's pretty much dependent upon what you want to be selling, what you want your business to be about, and yeah, it's going to depend on you. All right, number 9 is beekeeping. So yeah, I plan on doing some beekeeping, and yeah, you can sell the honey, and it's pretty much non-perishable. It can last pretty much thousands of years based on what we've seen. But you could also teach people how to do it as a course, right? And apart from just making money, I mean, you're helping bees to survive and thrive. I mean, there's definitely a shortage of ethical beekeepers, and too often you'll see, you know, them replacing all of their honey with something like sugar water and you know, doing these unethical practices. So yeah, it'd be really great if more people can do ethical beekeeping and leaving them a lot of their honey and just taking, you know, little bits of it. But offering them a safe environment, offering them tons of flowers and plants for them to pollinate and get food. Yeah, it's a win-win. Number 10 is selling mushrooms. And I plan on doing a lot of videos on how to grow mushrooms, but you can find all of those online as well. But here's some of the things that you could do with mushrooms. You can grow them on logs. And the great thing about mushroom logs is they can last a long time, you know, like 3 to 6 year range, depending on the species, depending on the length of the wood. But you can also sell those logs, right? You can harvest the mushrooms yourself and sell those mushrooms, or you could just simply create those logs, inoculate it with mycelium, and sell those logs. You can make mushroom tinctures, like I mentioned before, with the tinctures. You could do dried mushrooms. They last a lot longer, and you can charge a little bit higher because they're dried. You know, they lose a lot of their weight because mushrooms are mostly water. You could sell mushroom spores. Once again, they pretty much last indefinitely. You could sell mushroom liquid culture, and this is more if you're really serious into mushrooms. Liquid culture only lasts like 6 months to a year, and you need a lot more equipment to be able to make that, you know, a viable thing. Same goes for agar. Agar is, you know, technical term for mushroom people. Number 11 is starting a nursery. And this is definitely one of my biggest passions. I really want to have a tree nursery, particularly like a food forest nursery. But yeah, you can grow trees and perennials, and having like a mother tree or a few mother trees, which are basically trees that you'll take cuttings off of in order to propagate those trees or graft them onto rootstock and harvest their seeds to grow more of them. It's just really, really important to have a few trees that are a little bit more mature that can really save you so much money on your costs. While it might not be, you know, the fastest way of doing things, it's definitely the most cost effective to have a few mature trees that you can kind of help build your nursery from those. You could also do bare root trees in bulk, and I'll provide a link in the description to Goldshaw Farms, who first introduced me to this idea. If I remember right, he was growing chestnut trees, and basically what he would do, he would just put them super close together in this kind of raised bed, and he would cover them super shallowly and let them kind of overwinter. I think they need that. But then they would grow really well. They would shoot up, and you know, you can have hundreds of them spaced super close together. So he would just buy the nuts online and then do this method, and he would get hundreds of trees that he can take out during winter when they're kind of dormant, right? Where you can take them when they're not trying to grow at all. They can survive really well just being bare root. So you can sell them bare root. You know, he'll bundle them up like 25 at a time and sell them in bulk to people, even more than that, to people who are trying to do it on a larger scale. But yeah, really good method of making money with a limited amount of space, especially, and extremely effortless. You just need to mainly focus on your marketing and controlling pests. You could also grow trees for timber. This is definitely more of a longer term strategy for making money, and I honestly think of it more of like a retirement in a way, right? Because if you plant a bunch of trees that are used for timber, right? So things that have a really straight trunk, that are used for commercial purposes. The second you plant that in the ground, that's growing in value over time. It can take a really long time. It can take like 30 to 40 years for some trees to become like commercially viable. And that's why I think of it kind of like more like a retirement savings account that you kind of plant on like a couple acres. If you have those, obviously you need a good amount of land to be able to utilize this strategy. But yeah, once the trees get more mature, it's very little effort to manage them. You can kind of have it just be this forest in a sense that kind of takes care of itself once you get it up and going. And yeah, you can kind of do with that what you want. As you get older, if you need some money, you can have a logger come and take it down and chip it off for you, and you take a cut of that. You could do flowers and ornamentals. And yeah, I think these are a little bit underrated because of how easy and fast they are to grow, but they can also be medicinal, right? And you can market it in that way. They're amazing pollinators, and they help attract beneficial insects to your land and to whoever's land is going to be buying them. And they're great companion plants. So if you bring the knowledge to your customers on these things, like flowers and ornamentals can be really important, and potentially give you a lot of business. Number 12 is a you pick fruit orchard. It doesn't necessarily have to be fruit. It could be like a food forest. It could be just a bunch of nut trees, but it definitely makes the burden a lot easier on the farmer, right? All you need to do is focus on growing. You can have people come and pick it themselves. It's a lot easier. And yeah, it's definitely on like kind of the honor system, and you have people coming to your farm. But yeah, I think those trade-offs are worth it for like saving your time and resources to harvesting, to transporting, to marketing, all that kind of stuff. And number 13 is a you pick from the garden. So a little bit less common, but you could do the exact same strategy that people do with like a you pick orchard with your fruits and vegetables roots on the ground. Right? You can have people come and pick themselves their produce from your garden, and once again, it just saves you a lot of labor, time, and money to transport those things and clean them and store them and all these things. So yeah, it's definitely something to think about. Number 14 is to have a space that you rent out as a venue, right? So it doesn't need to be a huge amount of effort on your part. You could simply rent out a beautiful portion of your land, for a day or two at a time, whatever you want. People need space for events. And if you have space, people can do the rest, right? So it can be a wedding venue. It could be a birthday venue. Could be a retreat venue. You can kind of host different things like yoga or meditation, sound baths, Wim Hof ice baths, do what you want. The sky's the limit for what you can do with a venue. Number 15 is photography. So if you have a unique location where people could come and take photos or rent out that space to have a photo shoot, you could even also be a photographer that you offer those services to people at your location. It's definitely something that could be useful to certain groups who just need a dedicated space for a good amount of time without interruption in a beautiful area. It's definitely something to consider. Number 16 is to be a personal landscaper consultant or a permaculture consultant. It's definitely a little bit more niche, but if you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience in this area, it's definitely a service that you could provide. You could be kind of like a contracted worker in that way. And it could be really fulfilling. You get to help other people fulfill those same dreams. You can educate people in the process. And last one is number 17. You could have courses, workshops, and lectures. They could be in person or online, right? And the nice thing about doing it online is you can kind of film it once and have a lot of people get access to that, for the rest of your life. You can have people finding your business and finding that resource and paying you for that resource. So it's definitely good to have both, in person and online, if it's something that you're, willing to take effort to do to put it online. So when it comes to courses and workshops, once again, this is kind of a never-ending list, but I've compiled a list here that I think is really exciting to me to potentially be a teacher of and learn more about and help people with. So I'm just going to rapid fire through these things. So you could be a tour guide. You can have year-round tours to show, the different seasons and why you do what you do on your farm. You could have it be kind of passive, more like an arboretum, where people come, they pay an admission, and they come just to see, your food forest or whatever you're doing on your farm. You could have a workshop on how to build tiny homes, if that's something that you're going to be building, because that's something that we kind of plan on doing a little bit. You could have a workshop on natural building, working with things like straw bale, cob, hempcrete, adobe. There's a lot of different ways of building with natural materials. It's better for everyone. It's better for the environment. It's better for our bank account, frankly. So, yeah, these are things you could do. You could have a workshop on growing trees, grafting, transplanting, propagating. You can have an off-grid workshop, how to do solar, water catchment, making coal from trees. There's a lot of things you could do for the off-grid crowd. You can talk about permaculture principles and why the world needs permaculture now more than ever, and how we can do it through community effort. You can talk about organic farming and the importance of that, and why our soil health is the same health as our body, and why if we can continue to destroy our soil and pump it with pesticides and poison, that we are going to be killing ourselves more and more in the future. You can talk about farming as a vegan, which is definitely something that I'm passionate about, and I plan on having a farm that's as ethical as possible. You can teach people how to grow mushrooms. There's so many ways. I've grown them in a few different ways, and I definitely plan on providing that on YouTube, but also in person. I'm definitely passionate about teaching people about how to grow them because they're so important for health. You can teach people about herbs, medicine, tinctures, preserving methods, especially for people who are doing this as a lifestyle, homesteading. You could have a cooking workshop. You can talk about intentional community life and why that's important, and how to foster that in people's lives. You can teach people how to be mindful and how to breathe properly, because for some reason this is not too common of knowledge these days. You can talk about how to do yoga if you're a teacher. And then all the things that we've already covered, you can have courses on those, right? So beekeeping, how to manage compost, how to forage in your area, how to do pottery, woodworking, crafts, how to cook with the things that you've grown, how to create a greenhouse, and how to manage animals on your land. I'm sure that this is a really small portion of what can be done to make money when you have land or when you have a farm. And none of these are meant to be like the sole source of one's income. It's just meant to be something to implement, things to get your creativity flowing on, maybe some ideas that you might have that are little tweaks on these things. And once again, it doesn't even need to be for profit. I don't really care too much about money. I really want people to be more self-sufficient. I want people to be able to have the life that they want to live. So I plan on doing a lot of these things for free. I just want to do a lot of them because I'm passionate about them and I want to teach people. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to look at this list as like, oh, I'm going to go and make all this money. You could look at this list as like, wow, I'm going to go and help my community. And for those who made it this far, I've provided a link in the description to this document that has all of the things that I've just talked about in one concise list. And yeah, you're free to take a look at that if you'd like. And yeah, share it with your friends, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Peace.